music we listen to, the clothes we wear,
Money's gotta be the shoes.
the language we use. Black American culture is American culture. I spoke with author Pendarvis Harshaw to learn more about Black culture's influence and how we celebrate it. I'm Miles Best, and this is Black Culture is Your Culture. How would you define Black culture?
Black culture is, it's gumbo. You know, pieces of all different types of life from out the diaspora, all mixed into one. When I define Black culture, I think of the resiliency that comes along with that mindset, just being innovative. What resources do I have? What needs do I have? And how can I fill those needs? From our language, where we saw the Queen's English and we said, yeah, but nah, it doesn't really express how I feel.
Yeah.
So let me create this word to show what I'm finna do.
And then it's like,
They were like, finna? Like, oh, I know what you mean.
Write that down.
And even with that said, like, Black culture is so broad. It's not a monolith. It's not one thing.
What parts of Black culture is America comfortable with using versus like what they aren't comfortable with using?
Black culture is really intertwined with green culture. You know? Like, but I'm comfortable with whatever brings in the money, the revenue. When Black culture becomes a commodity, right?
Yeah.
In my opinion, it becomes watered down. And all of a sudden you miss the authenticity of the storyteller.
Welcome to Sage Collective's Barbershop Chronicles. This conversation is entitled Culture and Identity, Embracing Our Roots and Differences. And that word embracing is very, very, very intentional. This space has always been about honoring lived experience without ranking it, defending it, or even explaining it away. We believe that our differences don't weaken us. They actually deepen our understanding of one another. As someone who was biracial, which is an interesting term, I'm African American and Puerto Rican. And I've lived across these different cultures. I've learned that identity isn't a single story. It's shaped by place, history, language, and community. Before we begin today's conversation, I want to welcome back the men who continue to help shape Barbershop Chronicles. The amazing Don Jones from Alchemy Media Publishing, the outstanding Dwayne Cowles, the legend from Sage Collective, Mike Brown Sr., who is the GOAT, he's representing Dreamscape. And because we deeply value inclusion and intergenerational connection, we're especially pleased to welcome his son, Mike Brown Jr. from Cisco, today to join the conversation today. I'm also honored to welcome my dear friend Moses. He's a junior elder from the Maasai community in Kenya. His global view and perspective connects us to our ancestral wisdom and reminds us that culture is something that we carry, protect, and pass on. Moses.
Yeah, brother.
How are you today?
I'm so fine, and I'm so glad to be here and to see all your faces, guys.
You too. Excellent. So Moses is the father of three. He has three beautiful young girls that I happen to be able to meet, except for the youngest, which is Maya. So he's the father to Angel and Monique, who his wife and himself named after my wife, Monique, which is still an honor that we're amazed by today. And his wife, Charity, is a wonderful, wonderful person. And he's going to talk a little bit about his life and being a junior elder in the Maasai tribe. So Moses, thank you for joining us. We're very excited to hear your views on culture and identity. And we want to thank everyone for being here today. So Moses, tell us about this, because as Black men in America, when we talk about culture, the question is always, is it the culture that we've connected with and identified here in America, or is it our real culture, which started way back in one of those 54 countries on the biggest, the greatest continent? So share your experience in culture and kind of juxtapose African culture to what you witnessed with American culture.
Thank you so much, brother. And I'm so happy to share with you, actually, the Maasai culture, because specifically I'm a Maasai for sure. And so, brother, actually, if you remember 2017, the first time we met, by that time we were still warriors. So by that time, we were not actually graduated to junior elders, but you remember in 2019, we had that really, really big occasion that actually we graduated from warriors to junior elders. So the Maasai people are actually one of the very unique tribe in Kenya that has really, really kept its culture. And up to date, we still follow our ways actually way, way back from our ancestors. So it's like we have our own government. We are under the Kenyan government, but actually, if there is any problem within the Maasai people, before you proceed to the government, you need to go to the elders. So that is like a council of elders, and the decisions will be will be made there for by the elders. If you want to actually proceed your grievances to the government. But most of the time, we rely on our culture. We rely on our way of government. That is the elders. So specifically, the Maasai people have got their own way of living. It's really, really interesting for sure, because sometimes I really even get emotional to tell more about the Maasai people, because one of the main things that really, really impresses me about this culture is that we live in harmony. We live as brothers. We do have different tribes, that is different clans, but in between the clans, we still live in harmony and in peace. And in those sub clans, like for me now, I'm from one of the main and very famous clan called Imolilian. So so like if there is anyone who wants to marry, there's no way you can marry from your same clan. So that is just because of of the behavior and the culture that we have. So, and for me to be more clarity, actually, I will allow you guys to ask questions, because on that way, I'll have the floor on what to say and actually what to explain as well more about the Maasai people.
Tony, I can't hear you.
You're on mute, Tony.
Yep. So I was just saying, thanks, Moses, for that. And we're going to get into all of that conversation and the conversation and engagement between you and the other gentlemen here. So this session of the Barbershop Chronicles is more than a conversation. Again, it's really a cross-continental exchange that affirms the richness, the complexity, and the unity of the global Black experience. It's our hope that these conversations will inspire similar intergenerational dialogues throughout the nation, and that these conversations will lead to the kinds of collaborations that are going to foster the change that we all hope for. As we know, culture and identity are deeply intertwined, each influencing each other over time through lived experiences, traditions, and even personal choices. So the understanding where they intersect really helps us reflect on how our backgrounds and journeys inform who we are today. So I'm going to throw out a couple of questions. This is your session, so whoever wants to jump in. But I'll give you these three questions and let's talk about them. So question one is, when you think about culture and identity, what part of that story feels most essential to who you are today?
I can jump in and say something. First of all, thank you guys for having me. I think this is a really needed conversation to have, and it's really, really cool. But to answer the question, Tony, I think it is very, very important because when I think of culture, especially being African American in the United States, right? It's supposed to be, a lot of people when they think of culture, they think of like all of the cool things that come with culture, right? Especially being Black, right? The coolness of it, the cool factor. Everybody who kind of wants to, you know, be part of, the culture, whether it's music, whether it's fashion, whether it's anything, name it. But when I think of culture, I think of it as a standard of living, right? It's a baseline. It should be a guide of how to participate in life, to honor your ancestors, to just have some kind of North Star to navigate through life in a proper way. And I think that that's just really, really important. The reality of it is that, a lot of those things being, Black in America, those things we had to kind of create ourselves. But we did have guidance from our ancestors from Africa or, wherever we kind of came from. So I think it is very, very important to be able to look at that culture and, try to keep it intact. Because the reality of it is that, that culture is under attack for for, if you want to call it that. Throughout years, it's been tainted, it's been borrowed, it's been spit back at us to kind of resemble something completely different than we wanted it to be. So I think that it's just completely important to keep an eye on those things and to keep those traditions going. I can think of all the things that I would consider to be culture that I have learned from my father, that I've learned from my grandfather, from my uncles, my mother's side of the family and stuff like that, that I want to, continue within my own family lineage. That I just think it's just important for us to remember those things because, like people say, we'll start losing recipes.
Right. If I could ask you this question, Mike, do you have a sense that there is a difference in the way that your generation, I'm not sure whether it's I don't know how, I can't, I don't know. But
yeah, no, for sure.
And mine relate to this whole notion of culture. And if so, how do you see that? And I know that's a broad swath, but do you see a generational difference in how we kind of approach the idea of culture?
100%. I think that there is. I think there's two answers to that question because I actually was thinking about this. So I would say that our generation, yes, there's definitely a difference of approaching things, the way we have an outlook on things. But I will say this, I feel like our generation is probably closer than any other generation. I'm a millennial. So I think our generation is closer than like millennials to, Gen X and Gen Z. I think that gap is kind of very, very far. But I was just kind of like pondering that I think we can really see where things started to change like post 2001. And millennials were kind of like smack dab in the middle of that. We remember, the days before the internet. We grew up with the internet, and now we're growing into this, new stage of technology with AI and things like that. So we have a hodgepodge of just kind of understanding of how the world looks, which I think kind of shapes how we look at culture as well, too. That may be a little bit different than the way you guys may look at culture and things like that. So to answer your question simply, yes, I think there is a difference, but it's not too far off, in my opinion.
Okay.
Mike Brown Sr., I don't want to call him Little Mike. I've been knowing him for a while.
It's all right. It's okay. When we're in the same room, it's okay to say Little Mike.
Right. He's a grown man. He's married. It's all good. But let me just ask you, though, right? Because, Mike, I knew your dad, Mike. Little Mike, that was your granddad, Napoleon, right? So I've seen the three generations of you in the same room at one point. But Mike Brown Sr., as you look at your son grow up, you know, you're at his wedding, the best man in his wedding, there are cultural differences, right? 100% there are. But what is it that you see in real time as a witness to your offspring in what he just said, which is there are differences today between how his granddad came up, how you came up, and now how he's coming up?
I think that, for lack of a better word, when you look at the evolution of the generations and that, one thing that does stand out that he referenced is you do see the foundation that started all the way back to my grandfather, who you didn't, have the opportunity to meet. But you see the foundation there, but you also see it, how can I put this? Mike made reference to the fact of at least being in an age where at least he heard a lot about our culture from either myself or from my dad. We, those in my age, Dwayne and that, we lived through that, right? So what I mean by that is that I saw a lot of what Mike, quote unquote, heard about firsthand. And then it trickles down to, kind of where he is now. But what I observed though is the differences that I do see, like, we always joke about there's so many similarities between the two of us. But as I watch him navigate through life and I see how he deals with things maybe differently than way I would have dealt with it, there is still that foundation. I think that he gets to refer back to as he approaches, certain things. The other thing that I would say is, and I say this all the time, and Tony, you and I have talked about this when it comes generationally with our young Black men, we learn as much from them as they learn from us. And that's what keeps us connected to, kind of like I say, this evolution or this journey of what it's like to be, quote unquote, a Black man, Black man in America. And the one thing that I have observed, whether it's Mike or a lot of Mike's friends that I know, is they have not lost a connection to that. They may express it differently. They may look at things a little bit differently because they have the benefit of the lens of kind of where things are now, so to speak. However, it does stand out that they, any of them that I've experienced, they really haven't lost that connection. I think that's what's important because, to Mike's point, I think that there's a concerted effort to distance the generations from that, foundation of that culture, so to speak, and what it means to, quote unquote, be a Black man. The positive aspects to it, and maybe that's maybe the most important thing, is that they embrace the positive aspects to it as opposed to giving into or letting themselves be identified with the negative connotations that are put out there. So hopefully that answers your question.